Hello guys and welcome to another Tech Fusion episode. I'm Alex as always, and today we have a step-by-step guide on how to correctly tune your GPU in order to efficiently mine Ethereum. This video applies both to LHR and non-LHR cards, but just for today's video I'm going to approach it using the RTX 3080 that I have on hand, which is an LHR card, just because I know that a lot of you guys out there might be having LHR cards, and I'm going to show you how to properly tune those cards in order to get the most efficient hash rate out of them. But before we can go on with today's video, I would like to briefly remind you guys that we are giving away $100 in Ethereum, and this giveaway is going to actually end quite soon at the beginning of next year. So if you want to be a part of that giveaway, you can definitely check the video up here. But the TLDR of things is that basically you have to be an active subscriber to our channel, you have to leave a positive comment down in the box below of that video, and well, a like would be as well greatly appreciated to the video. Alright, so now with all of these things out of the way, let's carry on with the video. Alright guys, and welcome to today's guide, which is how to set up your GPU accordingly and achieve the most efficient settings out of your GPUs when mining Ethereum. So for today's video, I am going to use the MSI Afterburner over here. Of course, you are free to use any other type of piece of software that you have available for you. Whatever gets the job done and can set the parameters of your GPU, it's good to go. But just for today's sake, I'm going to use the MSI Afterburner, and also for simplicity's sake, I should say, I'm going to actually show you how to choose this skin, just to make it more easily possible for you to follow along in this video and setting the correct settings. Right, so just to keep things simple here, I'm going to start off by showing you exactly how you can choose this skin so you can easily follow along. Of course, you're free to skip this step, but if you want to just follow along in the exact same places and have the all of the values and all of the knobs and dials in the same place, then you can definitely follow along and change the skin. I'm using this one over here, so if you go over to your settings tab, whatever that might be for you, if you don't have the exact same skin at the moment, you'll find over at the user interface tab, just down below, all the available skins. So in my case, I'm using the Cyborg Afterburner skin red by Derek's Design. So you can definitely click on that one and click apply. For me, it doesn't apply because I already have it on. And then click OK, and this is what you will end up with. Alright, so enough about that. Let's get on with the actual piece of the show. So, as you can see here, I have the NVIDIA GeForce RTX 3080, which is installed in this rig, I should say. And I also have the flex pool. Actually, this is the T-Rex Miner flex pool that I'm going to use. At the moment, it's all pretty much standard. So I've just clicked on the reset button here. So these are the standard values of the card. As you can see, the power limit is at 100%. Temperature limit is connected with it. The core clock, it's sitting at 0. This should give us a nice clean graph over here to work with. And we have a memory clock dial as well, and a fan speed, which is set to auto. So these are pretty much settings that you can find stock, regardless of the GPU that you are running. You'll find different values working for you. So mine, for instance, as you can see, is now running at 1950 megahertz as base boost, or base clock, I should say, and around 9251 megahertz for the memory clocks. So just to get things started here, as you can see, we're running standard with the RTX 3080. So this is giving us around, 65 mega hashes for some 315 watts of power, which is being delivered to the card. And that gives us an efficiency rating of over 200. And well, temperatures, which are 69, 71 right now on the GPU, and some 92 or 96 on the memory side. So if we're gonna go and open up hardware info over here, which is a very nice piece of software that I definitely can't recommend enough. It's definitely a good habit to keep an eye out on your GPUs and what the temperatures are exactly doing to it and what temperatures you are reaching. I do have two cards running in this rig right now. This is the RTX 3090. This is not going to be the topic of today's video. And the RTX 3080, which is an LHR card. The reason I'm doing the LHR version right now is because it's actually harder to tune the LHR versions of the card than the non-LHR versions. So right now, this is actually very important. This is something to keep in mind. This is the GPU memory junction temperature. Right now it's sitting at 98 with maximum of 98. The Micron developer of the memory chips themselves, or the memory modules, is actually giving a rating for these memory chips of maximum 106 degrees Celsius before you're going to see some sort of degradation. And just over 100 degrees, you're going to see some thermal throttling of the card. So that means you're going to see some decreased efficiency of the GPU. And as well, you can, expect it to ramp up its fan speed quite a lot. At the moment, you do have to keep in mind one thing, which is actually very important. This fan speed right here that you are seeing on auto, this is directly synced with the GPU temperature. So the GPU temperature is the temperature of the die of the GPU. So that's not the temperature of the memory junction.
So that is quite important because you actually have to ramp up your fans quite a lot more in order to achieve better results on the memory temperatures than just leaving it on auto, which can basically not overcook, but anyway, you get the idea, are going to let the GPU junction temperatures go quite high, and that is definitely something that I'm not recommending. So the best thing to first do, what I should recommend, is actually unclick this auto button over here and increase it to something that is more reasonable. For instance, I know that 60% fan speed is actually working with my best OC settings on this card, so this is something that I'm going to start off with. But you can definitely start off with more. Let's say I'm going to start off with 80% and see exactly right now what's going to happen with the memory junction temperature. As you can see, it reached a maximum of 98. Right now it's sitting at 94, and it should start to drop considerably. But also keep in mind that we have not applied any sort of OC settings to the card, so that's why the GPU temperature is not really going to go as low as it possibly can, because it's still delivering a lot of power to the GPU. Power that it's otherwise being transformed into heat. Basically is not really helping the card in any way, shape or form performing better in Ethereum mining. It's just there because we have set the slider too high, and actually all that power is being converted into heat. But anyway, we are still seeing the temperature drop. So right now it's sitting at 90. The GPU overall temperature has came back down to 64, 63 and some change over there. And I will let it run like that for quite a bit before we are starting to see some better results here with the OC settings. Alright, so this being Ethereum, the first thing I have to tell you is that core clock is directly related to Ethereum mining and the efficiency of mining said cryptocurrency. The memory clock is also important, but out of the two, the core clock is definitely the most important one. So if you get this in the ballpark and if you get it just right, then the memory clock should help boost you over just that little bit. But anyway, the most important out of the two, once again, is the core clock and the correct settings for the core clock. So that's why right now I'm telling you that 1920, it's just over too much. It's overkill for Ethereum at the moment. As you can see, we're just reaching 70, or I should say 64. I know that this GPU is actually quite capable of reaching 74 to 75 mega hashes with around 200 watts of power. So this is already drawing like 300 and just getting us to 64 mega hashes. So we're just wasting some of the potential of the card just by leaving it at stock. Also, the efficiency under nominal conditions, it's over 300. Right now we're just seeing a peak over 200. This being said, I will leave a link down in the video description of this video that you can check out the website where you have a bunch of GPUs and the ballpark corrections of the OCs. So that should give you in the general direction of the correct settings, and you can tinker on from there. As you know, all the specific GPUs are not exactly the same because Silicon Lottery does play a role here. So even though you have two exact same GPUs, you might not expect the exact same ratings of efficiency and mining with both of the GPUs, because they all have different components and not all of the components are made directly and exactly the same. So let's start off with something that makes more sense here on the core clock. As I know, for this GPU, something sitting around at around 1100 megahertz and 750 millivolts, it actually should be doing quite okay. In order to open up this curve, you have this indicator here, which is the voltage frequency curve editor. So you should click on that. Here you have what your GPU is set at doing. So as you can see, this is a very small red dashed line over here. So this is the maximum it is going to go with its base speed. So it's sitting just over 1900 megahertz. So as you can see, just over 19 megahertz, this is what the GPU is doing right now. This is its absolute peak with increases in millivolts. So what we want to do is bring all this graph a little bit down. So what you can do is just click somewhere on one of these small rectangles over here, and you can hold shift and a normal click of the mouse and drag the whole thing down just ever so slightly until you are going to reach a value of 1100 megahertz, which is the base clock of this GPU, at around 740, 750 millivolts. That should be just fine. So if you want to put it in a direction that is going to be more precise, lower it just that much down, go over to the next box, and as you can see here, 1104 to, well, 750 millivolts exactly. So once you're pretty happy with the value that you have selected, you can go ahead and click, or I should say type in Control L. So this should lock in the frequency with the millivolts, so that way your GPU is going to run precisely at 1104 with 750 millivolts on the core clock. Once this is set, go ahead and close this and hit apply, and watch what happens to the core clock once I hit apply. It will drop down to where we have set it. So right now we are at 1080. eating up some 750 millivolts as we have said before. Right now, we have set the core clock, which is actually very good. You can also do it manually over here, but it's a bit tricky because you cannot exactly adapt the millivolts for the same amount of base core clock. So right now, I have just increased the next very important setting over here, which is the memory clock. What I do with all my cards, especially with Ethereum, is to crank it as much as they would go. So in this case, with the 3080, it goes up to the maximum 1500 megahertz. So that's what I did and hit apply. And we should immediately start to see some increase in our results. So let's see over here. We were mining with just 64 mega hashes a second with an efficiency rating of just over 300 and some 200 watts being used. And right now we're steadily increasing, so now it's close to 69. The efficiency rating went up to 321, 68.8, 69, 73.5 right now. And as you can see, the unlocker of the LHR using T-Rex miner has dropped down from 74 to 72.5. So this is the target for the LHR. This is what it is planning to keep it just under or around 72.5, just not to kick in the LHR for this specific card. So right now our efficiency has seen an increase, so it's right now sitting at 324, 321, and we are just at around 74 mega hashes a second, which is a very good increase just by increasing the memory clock. So right now, I think we're doing very good. We're sitting just at around 74 mega hashes, which is actually quite okay considering the LHR rating is set at 72.5. It did go a little bit over, and it's fine as long as the LHR is not kicking in. That means everything is good to go. And the very next and most important thing is to try now to adjust the power limit. So right now, after we have finished with the core clock and the memory clock of this set GPU right here, we're going to play around with the most important slider, and that is the power limit slider. So an indication of the correct setting of the GPU using the power limit is actually this reading right here, which is the core clock of the GPU that we have set at step 1. So this core clock right here should be stable all the time and should not go over or under. Actually, it will go under once we start playing around with the power limiter. Using Ethereum and playing around with Ethereum as a cryptocurrency, you will not increase the power limit, or you should actually decrease it in order to increase the efficiency of your GPU, because just delivering more voltage to your GPU will not make it more effective at mining this cryptocurrency. So right now we're going to gradually reduce the power limit. Let's start off with 90, click apply, and see what happens to the base reading over here. Right now it's still stable, and it is sitting at 1100 megahertz, which is actually quite okay. If the power limit is being reduced too much, you will actually start to see fluctuation in this base limit. So let's start to reduce it even further, like, I don't know, 85%. Give it some time to stabilize itself. Sometimes it might take up to a full minute or 2 minutes to wait around and see if the GPU is stable. Other times you might have or you might experience crashes of the GPU, so the whole computer or the whole rig will freeze, so you'll have to reset and start all over again. Or maybe it will just fluctuate, and that's going to be a very strong indication that you have to tinker around with the power limit and actually increase it once you start seeing fluctuation over here. So this seems to be pretty stable at 85%. Let's go ahead and lower it even more. Let's try 80. Click apply. Wait around a little bit and see what happens with the base clock of the core clock. Right, it seems to be fairly good as well right now. It's still quite stable. So let's reduce it even more. Let's try 75%. Right, 75% seems to be quite stable. Let's reduce it now to 70%. Okay, so this is our first indication that actually we're not stable at 70% power limit. As you can see, we have probably decreased it too much because we actually have fluctuations from what we have previously asked the GPU to be at. So we're asking the GPU to give us 1100 megahertz at 750 millivolts. But actually our GPU right now, it's fluctuating, as you can see, from 900 megahertz all the way up to the desired 1100 megahertz. So that means that we have actually dropped too much the power limit. So as you can see, 885 megahertz. So that's a rough estimate. This is a rough fluctuation right here that we should not be seeing. Right guys, so now we have a clear indication that the power limit is set too low because the actual voltage that is going into the GPU is not enough to keep it stable at the 1100 megahertz that we have previously asked it to be locked at. And we are just seeing variation between 840 megahertz all the way up to the 1100 that we are asking from it. So now we should definitely start increasing the power limit to arrive and find stability once again. So let's try 72. Even with this slight increase over here, we're still seeing some slight variations, not as low as before. Before was 840, so right now we're seeing a low of 1050. So we should definitely increase it a little bit more. Let's try 74%. 74%, it's still seeing some fluctuations, as you can see, even less of a fluctuation right now at 1095 well, 1065 to 1100. So we definitely have to increase it a little bit more. Let's try 75. So if we hit 75, do we have any fluctuations on the base core clock frequency here? Not as of yet. It is quite stable at 1110. So I think this is what we have chosen here. Yeah, 1110 at 750 millivolts. And this is definitely what we are good at. So as you can see, the power limit, if you drop it too much, you'll get fluctuations in the base reading over here. So this is your indication that the power limit is set too low, and you should bring it up ever so slightly in small increments up until you reach stability once again. So right now we found that 75% power limit is good to go for our core clock, which is set at 1100 megahertz, and the memory clock, which is set all the way up to 1500. And the fan speed at 80, I do think now it's a bit overkill because we're sitting at 82 degrees on the memory junction temperature. And if we wanted to run a little bit more, well, quieter, we could definitely dial it back to around 60%. It should give us a memory junction temperature of a maximum of 96 degrees. So once we are happy with the settings, you can definitely go ahead and click this little diskette over here and choose one of the slots so that you can save these settings. I will save it over at profile 1. And right now, after we have all done and set these things and set these values, as you can see, our limiter is dropped to 72.5 in the T-Rex Miner software because we were just playing around with the settings and just, well, knocking the software off. So we can definitely close it now and go ahead and open it up once again. And once we are opening up the software once again, we should be able to see the exact results and the exact efficiency of the GPU with these exact settings that we have set right here. So before this stabilizes, I do have to mention that for your own GPU, you might have different core clock values, so you can definitely play around with this. Just make sure that whenever you have an increase in your core clock, you will definitely have to play along with the power limit as well to increase slowly the power limit to adapt for the new values that you are setting in. And as well, if you're trying to reduce the memory clock of your GPU, then of course you have to play around with the power limit once again, because decreasing the value over here will actually give you a surplus, so to say, of voltage going to your GPU. So you can actually decrease the power limit while you are decreasing the memory clocks. So whenever you're increasing clocks, you have to increase the power limit. Whenever you're decreasing clocks, you can actually decrease the power limit. Because we have decreased the core clock from 1900 all the way down to 1100, that's why we are actually able to shave off some 25% of the power limit that is actually going to the GPU.
Alright guys, this was Alex from TechFusion. Thank you very much for watching this video, and don't forget any questions, thoughts or comments, leave them down in the box below, as we always go through all of them and answer all of your questions. And as well, don't forget we have a Discord server right now which is active. You can find the link down in the box below, where of course we are going to happily meet you, and if you have any further questions, we are happily going to answer them right there. Thank you guys, and see you in the next one.